Hi everyone, and welcome back to the 1000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die Valkyrie's vlog series. And today we have an episode jam-packed with some of the most decorated musical stars we have had to date. So sit back and enjoy as we look at some highly decorated artists. So album number 22 of 1000 is from an artist called Ry Cooder, who I've never heard of, and having done some research, I kind of feel like I should have heard of. So he's been active since 1967 and is still going today. Plays an awful lot of different instruments. Here are the main ones: guitar, bass, mandolin, banjo, slide guitar and vocals, but there are also a whole host of others he plays that I haven't listed. And he has a total of 15 studio albums, but of those 15 studio albums, you're looking at a man with 6 Grammy Awards, which is quite incredible. From the notes, very genre fluid, so not a guy that's tied down to one genre by any means, known primarily as slide guitarist, but is known for playing in all sorts of different styles, including world music and playing with a whole variety of other instrumentalists, including Taj Mahal, who was our very first album, a fantastic bluesman, and ranks 8th in Rolling Stone's 100 Greatest Guitarists lists. 8th. That's quite incredible. So let's have a look at the album we're going to be listening to today. Today's album from Ry Cooder is called Paradise and Lunch, which is a fantastic title, and it was released on the 8th of June 1974. It is a covers album of jazz and blues standards and obscurities, so I'm very curious to see what that's going to sound like, and it has a gentlemanly running time of 36 minutes and 51 seconds. So let's see what we make of Ry Cooder, Paradise and Lunch. That was a really interesting listen. It's definitely not an album that is purely jazz and blues. There's a lot of different influences and styles going on in there. You know, I think there's a definite country bluegrass element to it, and he's collaborating with a whole host of other musicians, which gives it this wonderfully eclectic sound palette that is really impressive. And throughout the album you get this amazing range of instruments. I mean, you've got lovely melodic guitar, really smooth vocals, not just from Ry Cooder but from everyone else that is singing on the album. And you also have like instrumentation, orchestral stuff coming in, strings and Caribbean drumming and all sorts. It's a real feast for the ears, to be honest. There's all sorts going on, and it's definitely worth a listen. Definitely one of the 1000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die. It's not an album I'm going to listen to a ton, but I'm really glad I listened to it. And in terms of my favourite tracks, there were a couple that really stood out for me. One was called Married Man's a Fool, which feels more like a traditional country song. But its lyrics are hilarious. It's almost a comedy of errors, you might say. And it's all about someone's wife cheating on them and why they shouldn't be surprised about that. So quite dark subject matter, but very amusing. And the song I loved more than any other was called Mexican Divorce. And it has wonderful guitar. It's super chilled out. But it also has like Caribbean drumming going on in the background, and it just doesn't really fit with the other covers, but it's amazing. It's right near the bottom of the album. I strongly recommend giving it a listen. So there's my piece on Paradise and Lunch, and let's see what Tom Moon makes of it. Tom Moon's reasoning for including this album in the 1000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die is that it's Ry Cooder's masterwork, in his words. It's his greatest album, and he really salutes Ry Cooder's ability to take the ordinary and turn it into something special. So he apparently was an artist that would take a children's rhyme or an old traditional ditty, and with simple guitar and brilliant rhythm guitar and everything else, he would turn it into something special. And I think you can definitely see that on this album. It's definitely a very interesting record, and definitely someone that's trying different things and willing to experiment. And he had some amazing guest stars on it as well. So the musicianship from start to finish is absolutely top notch. And that's really all there is to it on the analysis of this album. It's a great album, worth a listen. And Tom Moon's selected tracks are Jesus on the Main Line and It's All Over Now. obviously different to mine, so feel free to give those a listen, as they're probably better choices. And now for album number 23. Album 23 of 1,000 comes from jazz legend Herbie Hancock, active from 1961 to the present day, still playing. He was originally part of the Miles Davis Quintet, which is a legendary jazz act, obviously, and it's where he, cut his gears to start with, but went on to do amazing things outside of that Miles Davis sphere as well, and is credited as the primary architect of post-bop, which was a form of jazz past the kind of early era. And in terms of his career, 41 studio albums. That's just Herbie Hancock solo credited albums. It doesn't include all the stuff with Miles Davis and others. He also won an Academy Award for Best Soundtrack for Around Midnight. He has 14 Grammy wins. So in two artists so far today, 20 Grammys. And he also won, the lists of awards for Herbie Hancock are endless, but the one I liked was the Benjamin Franklin Medal from the Society of Arts for Lifetime Achievement. And he's a phenomenal pianist. He's a phenomenal guy, and I'm really looking forward to tucking in to this album. Maiden Voyage by Herbie Hancock was released on the 17th of March 1965. It has a running time of 42 minutes and 20 seconds, and it is a concept album. So the whole concept is the ocean and trying to freestyle pieces that feel oceanic in nature. And you can tell it was quite well received because it won the Grammy Hall of Fame award in 1999, and that's a pretty big deal. And having done a previous really good jazz album, I thought this time I'd just list the other musicians, because I've realised that these albums aren't just the soloist, in this case Herbie Hancock, it's the contribution of everyone else. And on this we have Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, George Coleman on tenor saxophone, and then two absolute legends. We have Ron Carter on bass and the amazing Tony Williams on drums. And I couldn't be more excited to listen to this record and see what it has hidden in its depths, because those are some phenomenal musicians. So let's give it a listen. Cool, because that should... What a treat that was. Again, a really, really lovely jazz record. It's fun. It's quite relaxed, but at the same time, the brass in particular is spectacular. I mean, it's all spectacular. The instrumentation, like most legendary jazz, it is beyond comparable. But there were a couple of bits where I just thought that the trumpet and the saxophone were incredible. And obviously, Herbie Hancock plays a beautiful piano, and you do get a feel of that kind of oceanic vibe. It's turbulent but calm. It moves you around. It takes you to places on every song, and it does cover a variety of different aspects, I think, of that. And you can see that from the titles, and they do kind of marry up. And yeah, definitely a great recording. Do give it a listen. Well worthy of its awards and its status on this list. And for me, my two favourite tracks were Eye of the Hurricane and Survival of the Fittest. Eye of the Hurricane because it's a bit more up-tempo and it's very in your face, and you sit up and take notice. And then Survival of the Fittest because it moves you up and down in terms of volume, tempo, and it's got wonderful instrumentation from nearly every one of those incredible jazz musicians. And yeah, enjoy those, and we'll see what Tom Moon thinks of this album. Now for some more interesting analysis. And obviously Herbie Hancock was a part of the Miles Davis Quintet, and Kind of Blue is probably the most famous jazz album of all time, one of the most famous jazz albums of all time. And that album moved jazz away from bebop and more into this more languid, chilled out kind of area. And when Herbie Hancock apparently wrote this album, he chose the ocean as a theme because he wanted to write music that ebbed and flowed like water and had these moments of restful pause. And Tom Moon basically says this is the best of the follow-ups to Kind of Blue, in that it really does capture the essence of this new form of jazz, and it's got moments of kind of quiet reflection as well as chaos, which is what jazz is. No rules, man, just play what you're going to play. We don't need no rules. And this doesn't have rules, but what it does have is wonderful elements of calm in the Storm to carry on the oceanic theme from Herbie Hancock, and it is a wonderful, wonderful album. I think it's on a par with Components, which was our previous great jazz record. In terms of songs that Tom Moon recommends listening to, he's gone for Dolphin Dance, The Eye of the Hurricane, and the title track Maiden Voyage. And now we'll move on to our final album of today. Okay, for our 24th album, our final album of this episode, we go to a country legend. It's why I'm wearing this ridiculous hat, because we are going to go and listen to some Dolly Parton. And, country stars don't come any bigger than this. Active from 1956 to the present, she is country royalty. And I wanted to highlight that she did a wonderful set in 2014, headlining in Glastonbury's Legends slot, which I watched, and I think it's probably the first time I've watched much Dolly Parton. She's not really part of my regular listening the habit at all. I'm not a country guy, but I was so impressed with her performance, her singing, her energy, her guitar work. She was just a real inspiration to watch. Career-wise, here are some stats. So Dolly Parton, the most I think of any artist we've had, has 64 studio albums. She has 25 singles or albums that have been certified gold or platinum or even multi-platinum. She has 26 number ones on the Billboard Country chart, which is the most of any artist ever, and 9 Grammy Awards. So again, hugely successful, amazing artist. And I think also worth a shout, Dolly Parton, I think, was a real trailblazer for female artists. And, playing from the 50s to now, she's been nothing but gracious and wonderful and just a really nice artist to see news about. She's always doing good things, not bad things. And a lot of respect for Dolly Parton. So let's have a look at the album we're going to look at today. Today's album is called Coat of Many Colours, and it was released on the 4th of October 1971 with a fairly short running time of 27:26 and just under half an hour. And it ranks number 27 in Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums, and that is really high. I do know that Coat of Many Colours is a really famous Dolly Parton song, so obviously the title track is likely to be something fairly special. I've never listened to a Dolly Parton record. I know 9 to 5 and, I listen to The Stream and all the famous ones, but I've never really listened to Dolly Parton much. So this should be really, really interesting. So let's give it a listen and see what we think of Coat of Many Colours.
You control that ship. You're a bargaining ship. Why would you destroy something you control? Because that ship...
I'm not really a country guy. I don't listen to a lot of country music. I've got a bit of a penchant for some Johnny Cash occasionally, but that's about the limit of it. So I was a bit reticent listening to a whole country album, but actually I have to say, overall, I enjoyed it as a record. I think the fact it was under half an hour was kind of helpful because it means the songs keep you interested and keep you going all the way through. Great things about Dolly Parton. She's got a wonderful voice, first and foremost. Her voice is beautiful. It's almost charming and haunting. It's got so much emotional expression and so much clarity and so much power. She really is an amazing vocalist, and she's also a bit like Bonnie Raitt in some ways, a really great cutting songwriter. I mean, most of these songs are about heartbreak. They're about being cheated on. They're about, all this horrible stuff to do with failed relationships, and not just with men, but with her mother and other members of her family. And she has such a great way with words and she's almost a storyteller, I think. Her songs are almost stories half the time, and it's a really good listen, definitely worth being on the list. Again, not going to listen to Dolly Parton all the time, but yeah, I'm glad I listened to it. And my two tracks were Coat of Many Colours, which has really beautiful, really soulful lyrics. It's just a really lovely song, and I believe when I read up on Dolly Parton, she said it's actually her favourite song ever, and this is from someone that's written apparently thousands of songs in her career. So that's quite something to say. And the other one that I really loved was Travelling Man, which is a song all about her running off with the travelling man and then her mum running off with him instead. And it's got some great humour to it, as well as some nice guitar work and some beautiful singing. So let's see what Tom Moon makes of Dolly Parton's Coat of Many Colours. My understanding of Tom Moon's analysis is that this is really Dolly Parton's break into true solo territory. So previously to this, she'd been working with another male artist primarily, and this was her real breakout record. In fact, she wrote 7 of the tracks, and I think Porter the other 3. So she wrote the bulk of this record, and it was all her. It's an autobiographical record all about her childhood, growing up in a house of 12 children, and Coat of Many Colours would continue to be one of her biggest hits, and continues to be one of her biggest hits to this day. And he points out that while it doesn't have maybe some of her biggest hits outside of that, things like Jolene and stuff like that, the kind of the soul of this record is pure Dolly Parton, and it's so true and so honest and so raw that the delivery of it just makes it a really interesting listen. He does say it is a pure country album, and also this album, as a pure country album, went on to inspire lots of other great country artists as well. And I don't know an awful lot about that, so I'm going to trust Tom Moon and his opinion on that. But yeah, I agree with Tom Moon on this one. Definitely a record worth hearing. And in terms of the tracks that he went for, they were the same of mine. So Coat of Many Colours and Travelling Man, as I do think those two stand out, even though I think there is a ballad called She Never Met a Man, which is also maybe worth a listen as well. A really cool, sort of more slow song compared to all the others. But yeah, go away, enjoy some Dolly Parton. It's good fun. And if you love country, obviously you've probably heard it already, but you're definitely going to love it. And there ends our final album for episode number 8. Thank you for joining me once again for episode 8 of the Valkyries vlog series on the 1,000 recordings to hear before you die. I hope you're giving these albums a try, and if you like them or you don't like them, or my opinions or Tom's opinions, then please drop me a comment, and happy to have a chat through this stuff because it's fascinating. And in the meantime, feel free to check out our other videos and our music video and our lyric videos and all that sort of stuff. But until next time, I'm just going to say ta for now.